and that suburb is Braybrook. So look, I've mentioned it plenty of times and I'll continue to mention this. Look, Braybrook was really the previous Bronx of Melbourne. You can search it up of articles in the, early 2010s and anything before that. Look, it did years ago have about over 60% of public housing in the suburb. That number today goes right down to literally about 18 or 19%, and half of that alone is aged public housing. So it's like, it kind of feels like an old retirement village living there. It's not like your derelict kind of junky people living there. It's genuinely just people who are from very disadvantaged backgrounds. It could be a widow, it could be someone who's had an awful thing happen in their life or something like that, who's just older. So you're only really looking about probably 8 or 9% of the suburb that's genuine public housing that you'd avoid, and those are only certain pockets. But Braybrook itself has done about 9.9% capital growth long term. In saying that as well, it is gentrifying too, and it's in that stage of gentrification. The income has gone up more than 2.5 times in the last 15 years as per census data. And also not only that too, it's actually a part of a government initiative from the Victorian Planning Authority, and it's what is an urban renewal project. So you'll see just here, I've written, it's like Marrickville in Sydney 20 years ago, and it's also on land. You actually get blocks here that are still above 500 metres square that you can actually develop, and you'll see just on the left there, towards a Braybrook urban design framework. So this is something that's going on here that's going to largely help the gentrification of the suburb. It's government backed as well, so it's definitely going to happen. Undoubtedly, it's one of the best suburbs. You're not going to find anything in the country that will perform this well for under 800 grand. And I imagine this is going to probably, it'll probably go within 3 months' time. Look, the best products in Braybrook at the moment are above 800 grand. They're probably 8 to 850, but you can still pick up something that's rentable for under 800 grand there. So great deal in that. Definitely a suburb to consider, that in Braybrook for under 800 grand. Look, for under 900, no surprises here. We've actually gone to its neighbour, and that is West Footscray. Look, it's known, obviously, as the home of the Western Bulldogs. You can see their basically stadium here. Look, again, another suburb that no one wanted to consider a number of years ago. But, look, where it's at now, it's actually come down a little bit on the data, but I'm telling you right now, in 3 to 6 months' time, this won't exist either, and you can still pick up dwellings in West Footscray that are rentable for under 900 grand. Now, that data will be 6 to 12 months slow, but I can see it on the ground. But the thing about West Footscray, again, gentrifying suburb completely. I'll just show you an example of what's happened here. Just contrast year 2021 to 2006, so a 15-year period, census data. You'll see there's two key things I wanted to show you here. So on the left, you've got median weekly household income and median monthly mortgage repayments. So 1989 and 2129 there. Then you got on the right, which is 2006, 821 and 1300. So the median income's more than doubled in that period, and the actual ratio of the income to monthly mortgage repayment, that's weekly income, has shrunk completely. So people here on average can nearly afford their monthly mortgage repayments based on their weekly income. So that's something that's really improving in West Footscray, and it's only going to continue. So it's definitely a good suburb to consider in West Footscray, and those numbers of under 900k aren't going to last for very long. So I'd say 3 to 6 months at max. So if you can get that at the moment, I'd strongly suggest you hit it up very hard, because it's not going to last for very long. I can tell you that right now. Let's get it under $1 million. And the suburb I'm going to get into, again, as I said, some people don't like this suburb, but it is what it is. I'm talking about investing here and making money, right? And that suburb is Kensington. Look, the reason a lot of people don't like Kensington is because they're thinking of it 15 to 20 years plus ago. And yes, don't get me wrong, it was very industrial back then. Yes, it was pretty derelict. Yes, there was a few problems on the ground, but Kensington today literally looks like this, and this is just kind of down the town centre there. It's a typical Melbourne sort of area. So, typical cafes, typical walkable neighbourhoods, typical people out on the streets there as they normally are, having coffee and, food. That's normal in Kensington now. It's not kind of as derelict as it was in the past. Look, there's a lot of dwellings in Kensington that are your original Victorian Edwardian, your terrace houses as well. All really common in that area. But, Kensington itself, the real real thing here is it's just the location and the demographics of the suburbs. So, I mean, Kensington's like 3K from Melbourne CBD to give you an idea. You still pick up some detached dwellings there, which is really good. It's got a very low median age. So you can see there, this is just off census 35 as well, which means young people earning money, which means they'll stay there for longer. And then just look at the demographics of the area there. So, I mean, weekly household income, 2216, monthly mortgage repayments, 2162. So, I mean, people can afford their monthly mortgages on their weekly income here, to give you an idea. And the general ratio you use is you generally use a 30% mortgage ratio. So 30% of your gross income should not go any more than that to your mortgage. So this number is obviously under 25 because in a calendar month there's obviously 4 weeks, right? And I actually don't know how census do it. I don't know whether they do calendar or they do actual yearly month, the actual, should I say, annual month. But even if they were to do calendar, it's because they earn more a week than their monthly mortgage repayments are. Obviously, that number would be significantly lower, right, than I mean, what they actually have to pay. So, and it's 25%, lower than 25%. So there's still plenty of actual growth here, even for the actual existing population that live and work in the suburbs. So, I mean, actually live in the suburbs, sorry. So, I mean, this is an area where, despite what people say, I'm telling you, it's going to do very well because numbers don't lie. People get emotional, but who gives a shit about emotions when it comes to investing? It's an objective game, really, at the end of the day. Great suburb in that in Kensington. I'm not going to do probably as many suburbs in the higher price points because I probably prefer under 1.2 million. And I mean, so the suburb I'm going to get into, that I can't believe you can still pick it up for under this because it's so underpriced. And that suburb is Newport in Melbourne's inner west. So Newport's a part, as I said, of one of the waterfront locations of Hobson's Bay. Hobson's Bay itself is basically just west it's the west bay side of Melbourne, basically. And you can see it looks like this here. So you can see that's just Westgate Bridge in the background, one of the big shipping containers that are going to the docks there over in Port Melbourne. So you can see Port Melbourne basically from Williamstown at the waterfront of the side of the Maribyrnong River. They're in Newport. Beautiful suburb. I mean, right by the sea. I mean, really good neighbourhood. It's very close to the CBD. You just basically drive south to, Westgate, and you pretty much go straight over it into the city. So it's not that far. The thing about Newport as well is the station itself is actually a major train line for 3 separate lines there as well. So you have a train going past Newport station about every 5 to 6 minutes. It's a very busy station. Just something to consider as well in Newport. Be careful where you buy, especially on the southern end of the suburb where the train line is. The trains go very fast past there and it is quite noisy. So I'd probably avoid that area if you can, especially if it's very close to that train line on the southern end of the suburb. But really, the big kicker of Newport, unsurprisingly, is the demographics there. So I know I contrasted basically Kensington's just in the past under $1 million, but I'd argue Newport's is even better. So you'll see here, median weekly household income, $2,657, median monthly mortgage repayments, $2,507. So again, that's even a higher percentage of weekly income than as to contrasting monthly mortgage repayments. So people can afford it easy here. That number's under 24% to give you an idea. So it's plenty of room to grow there alone. Not only that too, what I'd say as well is the thing about Newport too is because you've got such good transport there too, you get a lot of very high-end professionals are moving in because it's also waterfront, because there are homes in Newport that sell for above $5 million on the Strand there. You actually get some of the very top professionals that actually move there. So that's something you can probably contrast to somewhere like Kensington. You don't get the same level of professional. Don't get me wrong, you get I'd say probably up to your top 5% income earner that will live there. But because you got the waterfront in Newport, you get your top 1% that will actually live in Newport as well. So it's just something to consider. And I mean, both of the suburbs I just mentioned, these demographics are from 2021, and the market hasn't actually done too much since then. It's done about 2 to 4%. Really in the recent, basically coming out of the bottom from the cycle, really. And so that number here today, the monthly mortgage repayments is probably quite similar, but the weekly household income will be pushing up towards that $3,000 a week now. So it's crazy, these demographics, to give you an idea of Newport. Let's get on under 1.5 million, and that suburb I'll mention is Port Melbourne. Now, I've previously mentioned it as under 2 million, but I mean, I've seen and picked up properties here for under 1.5, right down to even 1.2, believe it or not. But your best ones are probably close to the 1.5 mark. Look, Port Melbourne was kind of your industrial kind of, I'd say, suburb of Melbourne, especially your pre-80s. You actually had it, believe it or not, some of the first public housing of all of Melbourne go here. So if you look at, I mean, along the Olympic Boulevard there in Melbourne and some parts of the real old industrial, you actually have your old duplexes that were originally the public housing in Melbourne. Some of them were literally sold off in the 80s to give you an idea. So they haven't been public housing since, I mean, like, I kid you not, some like 40 years, right? But anyway, Port Melbourne is probably one of the best located suburbs in all of Melbourne. You can just see here, I've written once an industrial suburb, now a thriving gem. I mean, I can't think of a better located suburb probably than Port Melbourne. It is an amazingly located suburb just south of the CBD, 2 to 3 Ks. I mean, it neighbours Albert Park and South Melbourne, to give you an idea, that pretty much the best areas in all of Melbourne to buy in. And I mean, it's so underpriced, so you're not going to go wrong buying here. The stock is so tight, it's not even funny. Everything is built. I mean, very good income, very largely increasing income, and such a good suburb. So you're not going to go wrong in Port Melbourne, one of the best capital growth locations in the country. Definitely one to consider in that. Let's get into under $2 million. And it still surprises me that this suburb is actually under $2 million. And that suburb is Elwood. So I'd say Elwood's kind of on your borderline of inner southeast and probably Bayside. It's right on your borderline of the two. But look, Elwood, if everyone wants to know where it's positioned, this is what it looks like. It's basically right on your Bayside Peninsula, really. It's between, St Kilda and Brighton. And the thing about Elwood is, look, first of all, long-term capital growth, exceptional, one of the best in all of Melbourne again. And it's very underpriced for where it is. So Elwood's like, I mean, you're still picking up for like under $2 million, right? And it's next to literally St Kilda and Brighton. And look, if you even go next to St Kilda, you've got St Kilda West there, all really expensive suburbs, and it's very cheap for that. Elwood doesn't really have any public housing either. St Kilda does. That's what brings the price down a little bit, but that's the reason for it. And look, another thing about it is, I mean, it's got such a good village, upmarket, it's beachside and close to the CBD. So this is just off a Domain article to give you an idea. Elwood, the Bayside suburb, full of dogs, prams and fit people. Look, you don't really get, I hate to say this, but you don't really get any poor people living really in Elwood unless they've owned there for a number of, 30 or 40 years. They're all upmarket professionals, generally, or people that own their homes close to outright of very low LVRs. People are running around with dogs, as I said, they're young families there too, who are upmarket, and a lot of people exercising in the streets, especially along the, should I say, actual Esplanade, the running track kind of there too. Very common to see people all along there. Kind of old school cafes like this as well, like this Jerry's Cafe there as well. So that's something you see in Elwood pretty consistently. Really good suburb to consider if you got that $2 million budget.